What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Musari Show. Today we got a repeat guest for the first time. He really got some good feedback from the last episode that he joined us, and that's my man, Jimmy Rios. Thanks so much, Jimmy, for joining us today again.
Oh man, I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to be able to, share some knowledge with the people that are out there listening. Anything we can do on the Masari show to bring that knowledge, I'm here for that.
No, 100%, man. Really excited to have you. And I must say that in the last video that we did, a lot of people reacted positively to the statement that you made about hard work versus smart work, and the feedback is really positive. So the first question. So today we're going to be tackling the issue of credit. In
Mhm.
particular, business credit, right? That's an area of struggle. Look at the U.S. economy. Small businesses are very paramount. I did read a stat by SBA that the economy has plus minus 33 million small businesses, and that does employ over 40% of the private sector, and it is a major generator of employment and wealth in the economy. So,
Right.
tell us a bit about. So, let's say someone who's listening who has a personal credit profile, right, and they aspire to build a business credit profile. So, what would you say that are the elements and behaviors they need to pay attention to in order to build, a business profile from
Yeah.
scratch, starting from the personal?
Yeah. So obviously, the personal side has a very big bearing on planning the foundation for your business credit. So I always recommend, even though I'm going to give you guys steps to build business credit, and you can do it at any given point, it really makes a lot of sense to take care of your house and make sure that we build on your personal credit, right? As we still work through the steps to build your business credit, right? Because the better that your house looks on credit, personally, the better it's going to look and faster that you're going to get that business credit off the ground, right? So we're going to talk about traditional modes of business credit, which is what I wrote my book about, right? Decoding the mystery of business credit. That's my shameless plug for my book, but it's an incredible book because it gives you that guide, that step by step model that in a very short time I'm going to kind of delineate in our show today, right? But what I like people to understand is that um, just like you're going to buy a house, anybody that's ever been through the process of buying a house and they meet with their loan officer, and the loan officer says, okay, we got to look at your credit, right? And the loan officer comes back and says, okay, we're going to get you into an FHA loan, but to do that, we're going to need these parameters. And it says you need 3.5% down, you need a 580 credit score or higher, you need 2 months of funds in the bank season. They start giving you all these parameters, right? So why wouldn't we do the same if we're trying to build your business credit and we have personal credit that hasn't been looked at or that is in disarray, right? We want to, if we don't even know how to read our personal credit story, right? The what is Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax? How do you read a credit report? Then how am I going to teach you how to go and get a Paydex score or Dun and Bradstreet and start giving you the tools on the business side if you don't even know how to read the tools on the personal side, right?
Yeah,
So everything is going to be very forthright, and I'm kind of like that dad that tells it to their son how it is
yeah,
because if I'm not true to the game and I tell it how it is, I'm BSing, and I don't have time to BS in what we do. I'm
that's
about
good.
efficiencies. I'm about let's get it done, and the sooner that we accept those realities, the faster we can start making the changes and the proper help to be able to help you get there. So the first thing I would say in building business credit. Let's look at our personal credit first. Let's pull our tri-merge credit report. And if you don't know how to do that, right, the Musari Show and Jimmy Rios will guide you in different ways that you can pull your credit report. But it's not just free credit reports where you don't get the scores. You need to know the scores. You need to know where you stand because how the scores are tabulated is a variance of many factors, and people don't realize that. There's
Yeah.
You can take somebody's scores and increase those scores by 100 points by moving the factors and changing some of those variables. But if you don't know how to do that, then you're going to think in the status quo, oh, it's going to take me 2 years to get rid of inquiries. It's going to take me, 5 accounts of, I don't have the money to start. I don't, you're going to start putting barriers of entry for yourselves where you're not going to be able to do anything. So we
Yeah.
want to get rid of those misconceptions and decode those mysteries, right? So that we can start getting the credit that we need. And it starts with professionals like you and me to help our clients understand that, and having a coach that can help you decipher through that. Because don't tell me, well, just go build a house and here's your blueprint. Good luck. If I don't have a team to help me build that house and understand how to read blueprints, nowhere am I going to be able to build a house, right?
Yeah.
So why is it any different with us, right? Now I'm going to give you guys the steps in the show to build business credit, but I want you to take advantage of the connections in the show. Reach out to the Masari show and then reach out to me so we can delineate and start working with you a little bit more deep, because everybody has a case study. Everybody's different. So, setting up your business properly, you want to make sure that you have registered your business as an LLC, right? If you haven't, if you're a sole proprietor, if you need help with that, that's an area that needs to be addressed. Okay, you have to get an EIN number, an employer identification number. This is like the social security number for your business. Your business is going to take on a life form of its own, kind of
Yeah.
like its own entity. And we're going to build this like if you had a baby and you want the baby to succeed in life, you're going to put different things and you're going to teach it different things, but they're going to have a social security number. They're going to start working, and that their money that they make is going to start getting reported. Well, with credit, with business credit, we're going to do very similar. We're going to open a business account. Okay. So we're
Yeah.
going to open a business account, and we're going to get very forthright in preaching about not commingling your funds. If you have a personal account and you have a business account, these are two separate accounts, right? Even if you only started your business and you put $1,000 in that business account, but you go to put gas in your car, use your business account. If you're going to
Mm.
go and purchase things for your home office, use your business account and get a QuickBooks account so we can start keeping track of those expenses, right? We got to start thinking like a business owner, not like a gig economy, uh, gig job, hobby. This is your business. Treat it with respect, right? So we're gonna start doing these things. We're gonna get a business phone number and we're gonna list it with a 411 directory, all right? Because we use our cell phones, right? And that's fine. I use a service called Umail, and I have 6 or 7 different numbers, and they're all business accounts. They're all business numbers, and I have it so it forwards those numbers to my cell phone. So when it pops up on my phone, it's a call for Rios Financial Group or Rios Business Advisors or Next Level Credit. I know what that client is calling, right? Because it shows on my phone that it's a business call, right? And when they get my message, it'll say, "Thank you for calling Rios Business Advisors. Press
Yeah.
one for this," right? That's what you want. You want a separate number that is registered in your name that will report to the 411 directory. It's very important that as you start building your business, that it starts showcasing to underwriters, to institutions, to others, the professionalism of what you are. I'm not saying that you have to have a brick and mortar business to be able to be a professional. I'm just saying you have to start painting the picture that you are a true business, because you can
Mm.
still work out of your home. We just want to give it validity, right? We got to start showing this. Um, you want to use a
So Jimmy, sorry to cut you a little bit. So
yeah,
let's
sure,
take a step back. So let's say I'm a consumer, right? I don't
yeah,
have a business yet, and I want to build a credit profile. So what are the 3 or 4 factors I need to pay attention to, and habits I need to develop in order to build that, so I can
yeah,
eventually up my score and boost my report? Because there's a difference between the credit score, the FICO score, and
Yes,
what's coming out in the credit report. So tell
right.
us a bit about that.
So with business credit, even more so than with personal credit, the ability to pay in a timely manner is extremely important, right? So in traditional credit building with your personal credit, you're going to get accounts, credit accounts, or even secured credit cards, and the norm is to pay your credit cards inside of 30 days, right?
Yeah,
Because it reports every 30 days. Well, with business credit, you're going to get what's called net 30 accounts. And these report, and you have to pay your bill every 30 days. But actually, you want to pay those bills like within 15 days.
yeah,
They're net 30 accounts, meaning that they're meant to be paid like in full every 30 days, right? The sooner that you pay those bills, the better it reports to the credit. And it's not going to report to your personal credit unless you personally guarantee that credit card, right? There's
hmm,
companies that we can set up that are very easy to get business credit. But how you're going to gravitate to the higher levels of business credit is by how you take care of these net 30 accounts, right?
yeah,
And so the ability to pay in a timely manner and using and understanding that the first 3 to 6 months in building your business credit is all about how you pay. And the sooner that you pay, the higher your score is going to go up. So if you have the money in your bank account, traditionally you use your business debit account. Well, use your credit card, but then go and pay within a week or two, pay that debt off with your debit card. Get
yeah,
in the habit of doing that because this is how business credit is built and it builds quickly. I'm talking
mm,
about within 3 months, we can start gravitating to getting real business credit. And when I say net 30 accounts. I'm talking about companies like Uline, Granger, Quill, Crown Office Supplies. These are companies that will extend net 30 accounts. And in my book, I have a whole list of companies, but it's just to get your foot in the door. It's just so we
yeah,
can start reporting, right? The habitual habit of paying these things every 15 days is going to get you to where you're going to be. When we start getting regular Visa, MasterCard, American Express, business accounts, you're going to have more leverage and you're going to get bigger lines. But that habit for what we call the Dun and Bradstreet, the Paydex score, those are going to be very important to do it right. And that's probably one of the biggest tips I tell people is don't go in with a consumer mentality. And, because if you don't pay within 30 days in the consumer finance world, I mean, you really can pay inside of the second month and
yeah.
still be okay, right? But with business, it doesn't work that way. It reports totally different, and it doesn't report to the regular three bureaus that you're used to. So you got to understand that.
So tell me, so let's say I have a friend who's the CEO of a company called Payfi, right? And one of the solutions they provide and one of the target niches are the immigrants into Canada, and they're expanding to the United States too. Because when you're
Mhm.
an immigrant, you don't have like a credit history with the credit bureaus, say in Canada or the United States. So basically, they provide a service where they have a third party insurance company that's their partner that will step in
Mhm.
and act as the guarantor of those professionals because you
Right.
need credit in order to, like, for example, have access to like a rental lease contract to like rent a property and stuff, right? So as a result
Right.
of that, a lot of people have gotten access to rental contracts and they're now renting places.
Mhm.
So if you're someone who is brand new, let's say you're an immigrant, white collar job, well paid person, you move into the United States and Canada, right? You don't have a credit
Right.
history. So you
Right.
eventually want to build a credit history through, your income with your day job, and eventually get to that business level. What would you
Sure.
recommend to that person? Would you advise them to like organically build a credit over time, or would you advise them to link their own personal credit to someone else's credit who has a longer history
Mhm.
to like build it up faster?
It's almost as if you looked into my model, as if you already saw into what we've been doing for helping foreigners, right? I don't know if you knew, but I'm a first generation Colombian American. Right, my
Yeah.
parents were immigrants from Colombia, from Medellin, Colombia, and I built a program for expatriates and people in Colombia that are starting businesses there that don't have American credit, but they're looking to get the lines of credit that American companies offer because in those countries they don't have that leverage, right?
Mm.
So understanding that we have a lot of Canadians, Mexicans, Colombians, of all and many of all the countries that need these services, right? So we saw that need, and we started working with what we call personal guarantors,
Yeah.
right? People that have established credit, and we actually have built businesses on paper that have all these things I'm talking about, the acumen to get funded, but we put a personal guarantor on these businesses so a foreigner can, in essence, kind of like take steroids and become Mr. Olympia in
Yeah.
utilizing these tools. Now, while we're doing that, we can also help them establish American credit, right?
Mm.
There's different ways to do that, but it takes longer. So if there's a way that we can work together in helping them achieve that side of the fence, it can be done, right? And I don't want your people to think that just because you're a foreigner that you don't have access to be able to get American credit. You can, you
Yes.
know, and it's just knowing the different structures and how to go about doing it. That's where we become very effective because we've we've identified the need. We know that working with our immigrant communities is huge. That there's a if we did an even further study into how many businesses in the U.S. are foreign owned, it's huge. And there's a lot of immigrants, even with regard not getting into politics, right, but just understanding the mechanics of what's happening. Um, there's a lot of non U.S. citizens who have an ITIN number, right, that you get to be able to pay taxes in the United States, and you don't have to be a citizen of the United States to pay taxes, right?
Yeah.
So the IRS wants to see business growth, and there's businesses that are owned by foreigners that are paying taxes in the US, and
Hmm.
it's 100% legal,
Yeah.
right? So you can still access and own American credit utilizing personal guarantors and corporations that we built that can be used as assets for yourself, for your company, right? So you can be a foreigner, set up a company with an ITIN number, and have an American company. And then you can also purchase one of our corporations and have a PG to help you bridge yourself over while we build your personal credit. So
Yeah.
there's multiple ways that we can do it.
No, that's fantastic. That's really an insightful answer that you gave right there. So tell us a bit about you made mention of the three like credit bureaus for businesses, right? So you're giving us
Yes,
color of how the credit bureaus for consumers like TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian assess. I mean, the factors they look at in building your credit score. So
right.
tell us a bit about your business, right? And tell us about what's like the maximum amount of credit that you can get as a small business based on your credit score.
Correct. It's a great question, and let's go back a step. Let's talk about the three sides for your business credit, right? Because there's personal credit. We already talked about Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. But when we're talking about business credit, you're talking about Dun and Bradstreet. You're talking about Experian Business, and you're talking about Equifax Business. And when we're talking about Dun and Bradstreet or DMB for short, they use what's called the Paydex score,
Yeah.
and the the um, the score ranges from 0 to 100. In personal credit, it goes up to like 850, right?
Mm.
With the Paydex score, you want to be at an 80 plus, so from that range of 0 to 100, right?
Yeah.
And that requires a DUNS number. This is where we were talking about the net 30 vendors. That's where they report, right? Then you have Experian Business, which offers what's called the IntelliScore Plus. This one also runs off a 0 to 100 range, and this gets info from banks the credit cards, and the public records. This doesn't require registration, but you'll get a file once the lender reports. So credit cards and larger financial institutions often report here. So this is kind of like the second one. Once you start generating some scores, right, with the Dun and Bradstreet, then you're going to start getting Experian Business to report. And then Equifax Business, the scores include business credit risk score and a business failure score. It
Hmm.
pulls data from financial institutions, utilities, leasing companies. It's less commonly used by vendors, but still important for loans. And then there's also ones where we call the Small Business Financial Exchange, which collects data for lenders. It's not a bureau, but it shares this info with others. And then there's also LexisNexis and CreditSafe, and they also provide business credit data, but it's less commonly used. So there's a lot of different ways that providers of loans will look at businesses to lend, and these are some of the ways that we help establish these parameters. I always say in my book, if you know the rules of the game, you're going to win.
Yeah.
Today, you just learned about three other forms plus two or three other more that are out there. And there's a lot of research out there on how to be able to partake of all this. But you got to start somewhere, right? So
Correct.
by knowing the rules of the game, you're going to win. You're going to get further along just by listening and doing some of the things I'm telling you about. And this is how we start getting out. Remember, with business credit, what's beautiful about business credit? One is that as opposed to consumer credit, with consumer credit, you should only use 30 to 40% of the limits that you're allotted. So if you got a limit of $1,000, you should only use $300 to $400, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't give you a lot of room to wiggle, and it makes it very difficult for a lot of people, right? Well, you shouldn't be using your consumer credit anyways if you're building when you have business credit. With business credit, you can use 100% of the line, and the lines of credit that are given are usually 10 times higher than what you would get on the personal side. So if I have a $10,000 line with the personal credit, I could usually get even up to 100,000 on the business side. If I have personal credit that shows those types of lines, I'm going to underwrite and be able to extend a larger line of credit because I see that on your personal side, you can already handle 10,000 or 15,000, right? Remember,
Yeah.
they're only looking at 30 or 40% of what you're allotted, right? So imagine if you have a 20, 30, 40, $50,000 personal credit line, and I'm able to leverage that knowledge to be able to lend you 200,000, 300,000. So on the business side, we commonly do $500,000 lines of credit. Right?
Yeah.
That's not far fetched for us to get business. And many times, if we structure you right, we don't need financials to get that. That's another thing, right? With personal credit, you might need to show your taxes and your pay stubs and all that. With business credit, if we structure it correctly, we can get we don't have all those parameters. You might in some instances, but that's why you work with professionals like us that know how to muddle through the waters and find the best deals.
That's fantastic. So let's say I graduate to the point that I start as an individual. I build my own personal credit. I eventually get access to business credit. I build a solid business credit profile. I managed to increase my lines to like $500,000, right? So let's say there's massive potential. My business is really scaling, and I could get to the potential. I could become a business with potential to like generate turnover of like $100 million, and eventually get credit of up to like $50 million. What would my journey kind of look like from that perspective? Would I still be subject to the credit bureau, or would it like look kind of different in that journey?
Well, I mean, the reality is this: once you're in the game, you're in the game, right? So you're going to have companies that report, and you're going to have some that don't, that do not, right? So I always talk about leverage in a very specific and special way because leverage is your friend. If you know anything about anything, you know that there's three types of debt, right? There's productive debt, unproductive debt, and destructive debt, right?
Yeah.
If we use productive debt in the form that it's supposed to be producing income for you, right? Then now that's being smart because we're making our money grow for us and using those that income to pay off the debt, right? That's productive debt. Unproductive debt would be, taking a loan and going to Vegas and putting it on black, right? It's not, well, you might win, but the likelier chances that you're going to lose. And now you're going to have a debt that you're going to have to pay back and it's not producing for you. You got to figure out a way to pay that back, right?
Yeah.
And then destructive debt. I mean, let's be real. If I go and use my credit card and go buy some crystal meth and get high and lose my life, everything that's good, then that's destructive, right? You're not doing nothing, right? So inside of the world that we live in with business, knowing how to use your debt in a productive way to further your cause is going to help you immensely. And if I'm able to work through credit to be able to do that and leverage you with better terms, if I can get 0% interest for 24 months and I got a line of credit for 500,000 through Rios Business Advisors, I will buy $100,000 of your debt and
Hmm.
pay 25% interest on your money for 6 months. You just made money on a line of credit that you're not having to pay back because you're making money off of me, right?
Yeah.
I'm, that's leverage. That's making productive debt, right? So think about how many more things happen when you're trying to put a deal together, whether it's buying a commercial building, right? Maybe you go in with joint venture partners and they need a down payment of $1 million, right? If I have 10% that I can leverage and get 1 million, I'm going to do it all day long. I'm going to borrow, X amount from my lines of credit and be able to get into this commercial building. So everything starts catapulting and stacking. We talk about next level. Everything's next level, right? Because I always say, we don't live in the box that they tell you to live in. Break the walls down in the vision that you have for whatever you want to do, right? If you want to build a building, if you want to make 10 million, if you want to do whatever it is, don't ever say you can't. Say, how am I going to do it? And let's
Hmm.
talk to the right people to put the pieces together to make it a reality, right? Everything I'm talking about comes from years of experience and mistakes that led me to find others that knew more than I did so I wouldn't do the mistake again. And
Yeah.
then from that. So all we're doing is being stewards of our money and being able to lead others to the right way. Everybody has a choice, the gift of choice, but it's, do I go left or do I go right? If I can help you make the right choice, you're going to be a lot better off.
No, awesome. Because I come from a country where we don't have like credit bureaus that work like they do in the United States and Canada or
Right,
Brazil, where there's like a credit scoring system. So
right,
basically, as a business, I've seen like small to medium businesses grow to become large corporations, right? And
right,
as a banking professional, I've seen their credit requirements grow. So, for example, for the larger businesses, what we normally do is we actually like assess the financial fundamentals, look at the financial report, the balance sheet. We do like a thorough assessment of the business. So let's
right,
say, is there like a stage within the United States where the credit bureau is not the only factor that the bank looks at, but they also look at the strength of the business's balance sheet, the income statement, balance sheet, and all that. So if that is the
yes.
case, at what stage would banks start looking purely at the financial performance of the business, beyond just like the credit score and the credit report?
Right. That's such a great question because there's businesses that we work with that obviously they can show on their financials the stability and the things that we need, and we'll leverage with their purchase orders, their contracts, the other assets that they have based on those financial and balance sheets to be able to extend credit. So then what we do is put a plan together to be able to get them the American credit. So that way, the best of both worlds happen. You have to have a barrier of entry. How do we minimize or lower the barrier of entry to be able to do the things you do? If you paint the picture to me and say, Jimmy, I have a business here and What country are you from? You said.
So I'm from Southern Africa, Mozambique. Not a lot of people in America know the country.
So Mozambique, if you came to me and said, Jimmy, I have a very high producing corporation and I need help in attaining credit, right? I have whatever it is that you export, import, whatever it is, right? We start looking at the financials and we start looking at the contracts and what we can leverage with you. We'll fund you based on those factors and variables, but then we get very forthright and say, okay, we're going to fund you, let's say $1 million. All right. I'm going to take from that $1 million, I'm going to set you up with three um, operational entities that are going to be attributed with $500,000 of American lines of credit. You're going to own these three assets under your business. It's going to actually generate a return, right, with the monies that we get from your lines of credit so that we can start building your American credit. So we always think in two ways. We say, okay, what is your immediate need now? And how do we satisfy that immediate need? But two, because we're the gatekeepers of the money and we need to get paid back, we're going to put different implementations and strategies to get paid back, right? And this is where we become extremely, we call it being your partner in progress because we're not just lending money to lend money. We're going to put strategies in place to get paid back and at the same time to further take away the burden of debt for you, help you stabilize your business and grow, right? And be able to put the parameters. So now you basically have things in place where you can, let's say we got you 1.5 million of lines of credit. Now you can use your lines of credit that we got you, and you don't have to go the more expensive route, which is usually when you don't have American credit, right?
Yeah.
So it costs more to get in, just like you would when you're buying a franchise. You got to come in with a lot more money because you don't have a proven system, right? So you go and buy a franchise because they got a proven system, but it costs a lot of money. Well, when you're lending in the world that we live in, they're always going to ask for something, right? If you don't give up some equity, if you don't, the less you give up, the more that it's going to cost you. So we're
Yeah.
going to try to help you to find a way to balance that out and put you in a better spot. What happens from that is that you're always going to be coming to Jimmy Rios and say, hey, Jimmy, I got this project. Let's look at it. How can we help? How can we do it? Right. But you're also going to be empowered because we just gave you lines of credit to start using and utilizing for the projects that you do have. So it's a win-win all the way around.
No, for sure, man, for sure. So, a final remark on my side. I was actually reading a report today about the Chinese economy, how the banking system kind of works, and it's kind of linked to the whole tariff war that's happening. I don't want to get into the politics of that.
Right,
So
right,
I did read that obviously the top four largest banks in the world by balance sheet size are all Chinese, and this report did state that a lot of businesses that a lot of the big Chinese banks fund, because the Chinese banks are either government owned or somehow government affiliated, they lend to a
right,
lot of businesses that are not necessarily profitable. But a lot of those
right,
businesses are very strong trade vehicles for the economy, even though a lot of them aren't very profitable. So they do export into different markets. So it's really, you know, I won't say interesting because that's harsh. I don't wish any harm in that economy, but
right,
um, it's quite intriguing that during this time, a lot of orders are getting canceled because of the 100+% tariffs, and
right,
all of a sudden you have a bunch of containers that are not leaving the port; they have to be returned, and people are getting laid off
right.
and other stuff. So, it, I really feel for how this could potentially put pressure on the banking system. So, other
Right.
words, it seems like you got a lot of gems in terms of credit advice on the personal and even business credit side of things. So if people want to look for Jimmy Rio's services, where can they find you?
So the easiest way right now is, I mean, I'm obviously online. I have a YouTube channel at Rios Business Funding. At Rios Business Funding, and you're going to see all my videos that I talk about a lot of the stuff we're talking about. And riosbusinessfunding.com is my website. Also, riosbusinessadvisors.com. If you even type up Jimmy Rios or Rios Financial, Rios Financial Group, you're going to come up with my companies under the Rios brand. And you mentioned something right now I wanted to touch on real quick. The tariffs is something that's real, right? We can't pretend that it's going to go away because it's not. So the sooner we can accept the reality, the faster we can get to finding the solution. Now, what I found, because I'm always two steps ahead, right? I already knew this was going to happen, right?
Yeah.
But knowing that if you have an American company, right, if I can facilitate a company that you purchase that's already structured in America, right? And we do the contracts under the American company, right? The American company is not going to get taxed, right? Because it's got an American address. And so you avoid a lot of those problems with tariffs if we're able to find little loopholes around that, right? So we go back to Colombia and Medellin, right? If you have a way to be able to utilize our tools to be able to help your bottom dollar because you're running a Colombian export business, but you're able to use your American corporation that we helped you buy to be able to do the things that need to be done. There's ways around that to be able to help offset that. And we're always two steps ahead because we're still thinking and bringing jobs to America. We're still doing and paying our taxes in America, but we're utilizing maybe more inexpensive to have our workers producing in Medellin versus in Houston, whatever it is, right? What I'm talking about is being able to think differently, not just think, oh, I got a 15 or 20 or 30% tariff. I'm going to raise prices. No, let's think about the solutions and how I'm going to go about finding ways that are going to help my company to be able to get around that. So these are some of the things that we are always with our tax advisors and the people in our group at Rios Business Advisors looking at to help the economy, helping businesses thrive, especially the little guys, the small, medium guys that maybe don't have all the leeway or knowledge. We want to make it take the barriers of entry down so they can play and participate in these higher levels of thinking and finance.
No, for sure. Whenever there's a crisis, there's always an opportunity. Just this week on Wednesday, on that day alone, I made a 10% gain on S&P and I made 6% gain on Bitcoin. I never invested in Bitcoin, but because I knew how the tariff wars versus negotiation thing works, I did buy at the dip. I did hear people saying don't buy at the dip because we don't know how low the floor is, but I'm like, nah. I started seeing signs that other countries were approaching to negotiate, so I speculated that the president was going to delay some of the tariffs because I'm sure that he's deliberate about not inflating the economy, but he
Yeah,
does create that uncertainty and use that as a negotiation tool, and it has worked to some extent. And
right.
I guess my bet was kind of right. Otherwise, Jimmy, it was so great to have you. This is a really rich topic on credit, access to credit. As a professional who has experience in banking, access to credit makes a huge difference in people's lives, both on the personal and business level. Thank you so much for joining us, and
That's
we
great.
will have you once again, certainly.
Let's do it. Yeah, there's a lot of information that needs to be shared, especially in the times of crisis where we're in now. People need to get rid of the fear that is out there. We need to start living for today, start working for today, and do what you can to be productive today. Don't worry about yesterday and don't worry about tomorrow. Let's focus on what we can do today. And between us, there's a lot we can do today in these 24 hours. So let's go out and let's get it done.
100%, man. Let's get it done. Thanks so much,
Okay.
man.
All right, man. It's nice talking to you. I'll talk to you
Take
later.
care.
All right.